Not a chance. Oh, well, listen, I want you to meet Cyndie. Did you guys meet? Yeah. So, Alyssa is a fabulous author. One of the retreat groups out in the Outer Banks. Which, by the way, I have been so tempted to write like a murder mystery about 12 writers. Yes.
So good to see you guys.
Yeah, I told you about that. How we almost started together. That was incredible. It's like a. It was an incredible. It was like a paper plate of miniature bell peppers. And then we found out we flew her in. Okay, well, we'll also get you a print. We made prints.
Do you want to send two here?
I'm really happy with like the physical book itself. So let me ask you a quick question. I've been debating back and forth. I don't really want to, but I wasn't going to do it.
Why don't you sit here, maybe?
Okay. John, you have seen me before. Did you hear our birthday? This is my brother, John. Oh, well, I thought birthday party. This is my wife. Well, should we sit right here? Things are on their way when you guys arrive, right? Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, if you don't want to, don't, but I'm sure that
if I was going to do it, when you should pick it in the Argonne program? Beginning? Regan. Yes.
Hey Regan, how are you? Oh my gosh.
I know, so that's the thing. I never wanted to be alone.
Good to see you.
You know, I could just do from here to here. You think that's too long?
Oh my gosh.
You know, I don't know. So what do we do? I'm pretty sure. I'm not worried about that. I was going to hold that up. The contest is just posting about it's tagging and every time you do your every time you do it, there's 10 books and you check on the 25th. Oh my god. And this social media.
Turn off my
No, I just brought it up.
phone. I'm gonna make sure my ringer's on.
Please do. That's actually a scene in the book. you can swear. I swear.
I'm so excited to start reading it. Henry and Cyndie, can I get a photo of
Where should we, Jasmine, where should we put the microphone? Oh, so we're just gonna hold it. Okay. We gotta do it super brief. So,
I think we're
I'm the best at it. Sometimes I feel like it's such a thing and we should just get rid of it. What do you think? God. No, that is not true. It's not a plus sign. It's an up arrow. I'm missing.
The up arrow, yeah, hold it, yeah, you hold it down. Watch that. Fan would be good.
Yeah.
Henry and Cyndie, can I get a
demonstrate with the video. It'll be a good segue, and then we'll go. Dude, you know, I
Danielle,
I don't really have like hot weather clothes.
1, 2, 3.
I should have like linen pants. These are terror waves, so it's pretty like basketball. That looks really nice. Oh, that doesn't.
There's water back there. Do you want me to grab you a water?
That's clear. Is everything? Oh, it's live right now.
It's kind of terrifying. You're like, do you want some water?
I'm fine.
Behind him. Huh? Oh, he's just. His wife is right there in the blood. And my mom. And then their kids are two little girls. She's in college right now. It's all from college.
Very nice. No Sharon Stone impersonation.
I would do.
Mother should always be
To tell those people. John, can you tell OT to bartend?
To bartend?
Yeah, I need somebody to work on your firm. Just like some boots. So, a friend of T's, he's the one who has the place in Kingston Ridge, with one too many buttons, which is how he rolls.
I did bartend. Here you go. I don't know what it's here. The only bar is a book.
Actually, I'm not sure. Our kids were in the pre-K. And then she was also on the board. The template, man. I don't think they ever did.
So where do we get? Someone will have to. We either not have room to carry a bunch of books.
Let me just confirm that
We see if they would ship them to us, or we take them off the premise.
Yes, I You're going to do the intro.
She's like, Heidi, I really didn't want to deal with me. And I was like, but I want this one.
I know we hold this down.
I think we're being a bookstore because like books. I think bookstores can be quite natural. Like the great low gap lab. There was a woman sitting here. I don't want to lean back because my shirt will get pressed up against my wet back.
started already. Thank you everyone for coming out for this incredible event to celebrate Henry's first adult book. I lost your intro. We are having such technical difficulties. The air conditioning, by the way, is on, and we pumped it up, but somehow 90 bodies does manage to build up the heat. So please bear with us. And the door is finally shut. So let's see if that works. And Catherine, oh, there we go. Okay, I got it. So thank you, everyone, for coming out. For those of you, we have a lot of new faces tonight. This is our new kids' room. And we are just about celebrating 1 year having it open. So we are thrilled to have had many successful events, including, no, Cyndie, you were still in the old store, that's right. So what goes around comes around. You will, next one you'll be here.
Okay.
But, so as I said, we are here to celebrate Henry Neff tonight with the publication of the Witchstone. Henry Neff is the author and illustrator of 7 fantasy novels, including the 5-book Tapestry series, and his upcoming debut, The Witchstone, which releases today, which is we're celebrating on Juneteenth, and I know we went back and forth. We didn't want to be disrespectful, but it's, tomorrow night is graduation, and we must celebrate. So it is tonight. And Henry's work has received critical acclaim, won multiple awards, and has been translated into nearly 20 languages from around the world.
Made up languages.
And you for your made up world. Henry lives in New Jersey.
There could be stalkers.
Oh yeah, there could be stalkers, that's true. And with his wife and 2 sons, who we will also not identify, and a pair of rescue puppies. But we are so thrilled to have you here tonight. Thank you. And in conversation with Henry is Cyndie Spiegel, which, if those of you who do not know her, this will be a real treat. And the 2 of them together is a real treat. By the way, they're on our podcast session 6 on marketing. And it's the most incredible session I have called 101 or 501 marketing. And you can see by the room tonight being filled and all the Witchstone books that are just piled up in the other store that you've done very well with your 101 marketing. But Cyndie Spiegel is the sought-after speaker and the best-selling author of 2 books, Micro Joys, Finding Hope, Especially When Life Is Not Okay, and A Year of Positive Thinking, Daily Inspiration, Wisdom, and Courage, which sold nearly 300,000 copies in the U.S. and has been translated into multiple languages. Not over 20 now.
No. And they're not made up.
And
They're real.
And Cyndie also lives in New Jersey with her husband and 2 overly particular cats. So thank you both for being here tonight. And we are ready to hear all about
Did I get it? Okay. So it's Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. Henry invited the only Black Jew that he knew to be in conversation with him on Juneteenth. So thank you, Henry, for that. We all know Henry in various ways. He's a friend, he's a neighbor, he's an okay husband to Danielle, he's a very good dad, he is possibly an okay son to Terry. I think we can collectively agree that he is lovable and nice and he's a kind guy. And he is also an incredibly twisted son of a bitch. And if you don't know that, you will learn that. Would you like to do a reading?
Sure.
Excellent.
Well, thank you everybody for coming out tonight. It's truly heartwarming sight to see so many people here, thousands of you for the people who are live streaming. And no, but truly it's an honor and I feel very, very privileged. And I had no idea it would be such a hostile audience. we're gonna push on through. So anyway, I'll do a very brief reading to show how twisted and sick I am. And the setup for this, I'm not going to start from the very beginning of the book, but the setup of this is that one of our protagonists in the Witchstone is a demon named Laszlo, and Laszlo has a job in one of Hell's many divisions, where he is a curse keeper. So when a curse is invoked, when a human sells their soul to invoke a curse, Hell assigns a demon to manage the particulars. And Laszlo is unquestionably Hell's worst curse keeper, most negligent curse keeper, and he has just arrived at work to find out that they're undergoing an audit. And they have a new boss who is a scary sounding overlord, and two of his colleagues have just gone into the boss's office and not come out. As far as demons went, Laszlo was a relative nipper. He had arrived during a demonic baby boom that took place during the Middle Ages. Still, 800 years was not an insignificant amount of time. Laszlo had witnessed the Fourth Crusade, the Renaissance, and the Industrial Revolution. But in all those centuries, he had never seen another demon crucibled. Until now. The crucible stood in the corner, an industrial funnel supported by a sturdy tripod. The funnel's iron was bathed in heat shimmer, and its scorched and blackened spout extended into a mason jar etched with glowing sigils. At present, the jar was empty. The jars on the desk were not. There were two of them, and each contained a bubbling goo. Now and again, one would defy gravity and ooze up the jar's sides as if trying to escape. Whenever it reached the sigils, however, the symbols pulsed a sinister red, and the goo retreated. An appalled Laszlo leaned on the door jamb for support. The spectacle was nauseating, yet he couldn't look away. He also couldn't help wondering which goo was Scylla and which was Kozlowski. Thatcher's monotone snapped him out of it. Of all the days to be late. Standing beside the credenza, the toadish Class 4 held a stack of files. A stranger was behind her desk, a powerfully built figure in scarlet robes, whose leonine head was crowned with a mane of flickering white flames. Miss Thatcher made a deferential gesture. Laszlo, it is my privilege to introduce His Fiendishness, Sir Malignus Andravor. The society now falls under his authority. Laszlo touched a knuckle to his forehead. Honored. The overseer fixed Thatcher with an acid stare. She cleared her throat. When meeting a demon of executive rank, it is customary to bow. The statement was delivered in Thatcher's habitual drone, but Laszlo knew her well enough to catch the alarm in those bulbous eyes. Get down, you moron. Laszlo dropped to one knee. Sorry, we don't usually see anything above a Class 4. It's an honor to meet you, your fiendishness. Andravor replied in a patrician baritone. Lower. Excuse me? The overseer made a downward gesture. Laszlo caught his drift and complied. This continued until Laszlo was lying face down with his arms limply at his sides, like a toddler holding a protest in the cereal aisle. That will do, the overseer finally growled. Get up. Climbing to his feet, Laszlo brushed fibers from his pants while Andravor consulted a file. You are curse keeper number 923, he said. I also go by 007. Was that meant to be amusing? Laszlo coughed. Just trying to lighten the mood, your fiendishness. You see, I can't help noticing that crucible in the corner and those jars on the desk. In response, Andravor took one of the jars and cradled it in a hand the size of a catcher's mitt. The contents quivered. These demons were failures, 923, remarked the overseer impassively. Now that I'm running this division, I intend to find out who is useful and who is useless. And that is the beginning. And that is, in many ways, the setup for Laszlo's dilemma, where he is going to have to prove himself over a number of days. And now we'll just, I think, launch into our little conversation.
Yes, we can do that.
We can do that. Excellent.
So, do we need this? Can you hear without it?
Well, they might need it for the live stream. I'm not sure. There's thousands.
The thousands of people on the live stream. Thousands, maybe millions. So this is your adult debut after 6 YA novels, right? 5 in the Tapestry series and Imperium.
Correct.
What made you want to shift to an adult audience? And is this book really adult?
Great question. So, in many ways, I would actually say that this is an adult book that follows a lot of the plot structure that you would typically find in more of a YA novel. But my writings of the Tapestry series and Imperium, those were written, oftentimes the way books are marketed is based on the age of the protagonist. But those books always had a lot of adult readers. And the fifth book in the Tapestry series is kind of a beast of a book. It's a tome. And I was talking with the editor of that book one time, and he asked me, he's like, have you ever thought about writing for adults? Which I thought was an incredibly backhanded compliment. Thank you for editing my children's book. And he's asking me if I want to write for adults. But I always sort of had, and I found myself as I was writing, kind of leaning more mature in some of the themes and some of just the sensibility of the writing. And so when I had a number of ideas for some books and some stories I wanted to write, the idea of a curse keeper came to me years ago, the idea of a demon or a spirit assigned to manage a curse. And I was thinking about the family that might be suffering under this curse, and that they had done this for many generations, and the only way they could survive was by serving as sin eaters for a regressive religious community in an isolated sort of little corner of the Catskills that the tourists don't go to. And I wrote and if you're not aware, a sin eater, this is an old and disavowed practice of the church where they would literally pay somebody to come in when somebody died and eat a loaf of bread and drink some wine that symbolized their sins. And the sin eater would take that person's sins upon themselves so that the deceased could go to heaven unblemished. And these people who were sin eaters were pariahs, and they were often stoned and chased away, and because they were considered to be living repositories of sin. And so I wrote a chapter about this sin eater, and my agent at the time looked at it and he said, I love it. This is not a children's book. And so I took that as a hint, and I decided to lean into writing a book for adults. And so that was kind of the journey that I went on, and it felt good. It was a good challenge, but it also felt right for me at this stage in my career.
Because you weren't very good at writing YA novels?
That was what the editor certainly implied.
So considering that all of your books are fantasy fiction, how did your storytelling change from your previous 6 books to The Witchstone?
So I don't think I tried to consciously change too much. So I didn't necessarily sit down and say, okay, I'm writing for adults, so I'm going to fundamentally change my game as a writer. But what I did try to do was, so sometimes when you're writing for a younger audience, you are just necessarily, there are certain topics you can't tackle in certain ways. And so I did want to take the guardrails off of that for this, but I did want to also steer away from anything that felt too gratuitous and try to get more in the headspace of older protagonists to age the novel up in that way without just simply throwing in a bunch of sort of rated R material, spackling kind of a middle grade novel with a bunch of rated R material. As a writer, I do think that I've gotten better as my books have gone, which I feel proud about. I've worked hard to try to become a better writer. And I think one sense for The Witchstone, at least I hope so, is that sometimes I think my world building can be a little heavy-handed. And I think with The Witchstone, it's a little bit more painterly, where it sort of dabs of elements of the setting and the time and implications of the world and how it operates without necessarily becoming the literal tour guide from hell and taking you through every aspect of the world and how it works and the mechanics.
So, is there rated R content in The Witchstone?
There is rated R content in The Witchstone. I used to let my boys read some of the
Do you have something
chapters.
you'd like to
Some
share?
of the chapters they can. Well, I mean, everybody's asking me about the new book, and I'm like, it's my first adult novel, which sounds very racy. And I felt an obligation to at least have some bodice-ripping elements in the story.
I have read it. There is bodice
There
ripping.
is bodice-ripping.
So the world building in The Witchstone is genius. I'm not the only one who thinks that. A few of the people who wrote reviews also thought that. Your mom, who gave you 4 stars out of 5, did not. That is a true story. His mom, Terry, 4 stars out of 5, but we're not gonna go there just yet, but feel free to chat with her
I
about
think
that.
that's a B minus.
That's, I think, a solid B,
Yeah.
a B. So, if I can rein this back in a little bit, don't know how to do that. Where do you even begin? This book takes us around the world. It takes us to the underworld. It's in New York. It's all over the place. Literally, where do you begin to write a book like this?
So world building is one of my favorite things to do as a writer, and I think it sort of comes from 2 different places. One is just having an active imagination and enjoying sort of thinking about different settings and different conditions and elements of how that world operates or who inhabits that world. That's sort of the creative end. It's a little like frosted mini wheats. There's the sugar side and the nutritional side. So that's sort of the sugary creative side. And then the more substantive nutritional side is, I've always been a student of history, and I used to be a history teacher. And so I like to kind of combine the creative elements, but ground them in something that feels real. And when I was a teacher, I would teach, AP history. And one of the ways I tried to get my students to think about a particular snapshot in time in history in a particular place or culture or civilization was an acronym called SPRITE, which stood for Society, Politics, Religion, Ideas and Culture, Technology, and Economy. And I go through some of those elements when I'm world building. And I will sit down and think about how these things inform each other, not only as a static picture of the world, but also if something happens and upsets the equilibrium, how things might react. And so with the Witchstone and with a lot of my books, there is what they call a Bible. So I created a Bible for the world and the characters and the history. You only see a very small chunk of what's in that Bible in the book. But I feel like that is time well spent, even if you don't necessarily put it in the book itself, because I feel very confident that everything is anchored in something real, that everything functions. Something that is frustrating for me when I'm reading a book is if there are just glaring plot holes or certain things about a world that just simply don't make sense. Or if the world feels very static and you're looking at just sort of a 2-dimensional backdrop. I like things to feel like it's dynamic, it's rich, it's layered, but also, and hopefully in this book, not overwhelming, because ultimately I do think a book is about the characters and the journey they go on, and not, how the economy works.
It was more exciting than that. Is this me? What is happening? The down arrow? How's that? All right, teamwork is dream work. Bible, how long was the Bible? How big was that?
It's like 60 pages.
60 pages,
Mhm.
and then you go from there.
Yeah, it's like the history of the curse, background on the characters. I have a detailed workup of how hell works and all the different divisions of hell and the cosmology and what the schism was, where hell was actually formed and the spirits that broke away and all of this stuff. It does not necessarily follow Judeo-Christian teachings terribly closely, so I hope people allow me some creative license. It is fiction.
So
but
it's
yeah.
where we fact check, basically.
It's
It's
where
where
you
we fact check.
That's
And
right.
how long did it take you to write this tome? This is 460 pages.
Oh, that's never the challenge for me. I'm trying to learn how to write smaller books. Paper's expensive these days.
Right. How long did this take from start
Good
to
question.
finish?
I don't even know. So this was sort of my pandemic baby. But some of the ideas for this book probably go back 7 or 8 years for different projects that I might have started and then stopped or abandoned. And sometimes I find that's the case. You'll be working on something and the book isn't working and it's fatally flawed, but there's something in it that is a good idea.
Sure.
And sometimes, and the Witchstone is in some ways an amalgamation of some of those ideas from previous stories that I abandoned, that I was like, oh, these fit together better in this way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I finished, it probably took 18 months of actual drafting to write the book. And it was what kind of kept me sane during the pandemic, because And it's probably one of the reasons why I lean more into the humor, because I needed something that would make me laugh.
Do you think it's funny?
I feel like that's a very loaded question. I think my mom thinks it's 80% funny.
And it's actually a very funny book. I mean, 4 out of 5 stars ain't bad.
That's pretty good.
So you blend together a lot of different genres, right? There's fantasy, there's comedy, there's horror, there's even family drama. Some of the chapters are really funny, some of them are dark, and some of them are weirdly sad and touching. Did you consciously try to incorporate all these elements, and how do you go about balancing them out so that they actually make sense when telling this story?
I definitely, one of the things that I would like to think is a consistent quality across all the books I've written is that you experience a pretty full spectrum of emotions.
Yeah.
So I do want you to laugh when you read my books. I do want you at times to be frightened. I do want you at times to be moved and feel emotional. And so with the Witchstone, I was definitely leaning more into the humor elements,
Yeah.
but I did want to work hard to make sure that the moving things landed. And some of the scary, so it's interesting, we had some conversations with some people who were interested in adapting this for TV and film, and it was interesting hearing people's takes, but sometimes some of the people who were interested in it, they really wanted to be kind of almost like a sitcom-y kind of comedy, and I veered away from that hard, because some of the things that are in the story aren't funny. And this family has been suffering under this curse for generations. And so I like, some of the chapters are dark, but that is something that I very consciously do try to do, to balance those things out. And sometimes things will end with a wink, and sometimes they won't. And I feel like I have to earn that credibility with the reader for things to land the way that I want them to.
Thank you for that. This next question is important. You swear like a fucking sailor in this book. How do you feel about your kids reading this and picking up your filthy cussing habits?
I want my kids to have a rich and robust education. And so during Fleet Week, I take them down to listen to sailors, merchant marine, members of our Navy. No, you read the advanced reader copy. Actually, this is sort of an interesting thing. So Cyndie read the advanced reader copy
And it took me
to
too
get
long
ready for
according
this.
to you.
But there were more swears in the advanced reader copy than there are in the final version. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was when we were doing sort of that final pass, was I did want to take out anything that seemed gratuitous. But I didn't want to take everything out. When you listen to people and the way they speak and the way I speak, people do swear. I felt like some of the situations it was warranted. But one of the things that I did play with in the book is, so this family, the people who are suffering from the curse, there is a young woman who sets out to try to break the curse. And she has Laszlo, the demon, with her on the journey, and they have conflicting agendas. And her younger brother tags along. And her younger brother, in some ways, serves as the conscience in the story. So when Maggie swears, Lump, which is his nickname, his real name is George, he calls her out on it. And it's clear that he is uncomfortable with it. And it was probably some element of my subconscious wagging a finger at me and knowing that my mother was going to read this book and knock a star off
And she did.
because of the
today.
language.
Can I read a line from the book?
Sure.
Okay. So, you don't need to swear. I'm a grown-ass woman who just impaled a monster with a hat stand. I'll swear if I want to. For example, at the moment, my foot is fucking killing me.
To be fair, she had suffered a grievous injury. And she was in Liechtenstein, which part of the book is kind of a globetrotting. It's really, in some ways, it's kind of a road trip story mixed with a heist film with some elements of comedy. Yeah, I mean, there are some different things in there. And part of the journey, they have to go to Liechtenstein. And if you are not familiar with Liechtenstein, Liechtenstein has about the population of Montclair, but it is technically a sovereign country. So they were having a horrific experience in Liechtenstein, and Maggie was upset.
Maggie was upset. There's just 2 lines here I'd love to hear you read. Would that be okay? I would just like you to start with, he snored derisively. If you can just start there. Just 3 sentences would be great. For all your friends.
I am absolutely going to get you for this. He snorted derisively. Oh yeah? Where were you 20 minutes ago? My suit's filthy and I took a beak to the cubes. Maggie grimaced. Your cubes? My balls, sweet cakes, my cojones, my nectarines, A woman's voice squawked from the phone. He sat up. Hello? Spricks do English? You do? Great. I need the best room you've got. Tonight. Something with lots of marble and room service and a bidet like a fire hose. The demon rubbed his neck while the woman ran through several options. The Imperial Suite sounds perfect, he said. Oh, and when I get there, I'll need a bucket of champagne and the number of a morally casual masseuse. It's a great gift for kids.
You're welcome, all of you, for that.
I don't know. Yeah.
34? Okay. So, one of your protagonists is an 800-year-old, very attractive demon named Laszlo.
Yes.
And Maggie Drakeford, who is a 19-year-old woman. How'd you do that?
How did I write for characters who are
You know what
not
I'm asking. You prep these
50-year-old
questions, correct?
men?
Yes.
So, I think
I really do love
writers,
it, by the
and
way.
we do have a lot of writers in this room, which is fun. And so I'm wondering if they would agree with me. But when I am writing, I am acting.
Yeah.
So I am very much, when I am writing for Maggie, I am a 19-year-old woman. The most
Not creepy at all.
unattractive 19-year-old woman you've ever seen. But I really do try to get in the mind. So I tend to be very visual.
Yes.
So I also do some art and illustrate, and so I tend to see things very cinematically when I write. And I also, I think, really do get in the headspace of the characters. And I try to do that authentically. And I think that has helped my writing, where I try not to have too prescribed a notion of what might happen in a given scene. So it's a little like Curb Your Enthusiasm, where you have a sense of, kind of overall what the scene is about, but you want to give the players in the scene room to improvise a little bit and to kind of play off each other. And so some of the dialogue that I feel like works the best throughout the book is when I really am acting out the scene in my mind between the characters. And I actually really enjoy writing protagonists that have nothing in common with me.
So you're not an 800-year-old,
Not an 800-year-old
very
handsome
attractive
demon.
demon.
Yes,
So that's not you.
That is not
Okay.
me.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that.
sure.
Can I just ask one more follow-up question? I don't know why I'm saying can I, I'm going to. The 19-year-old woman, but how did you learn to do that? Maggie is very, she's a badass, right? When you all read this book, you will love Maggie. But how did you do that? Like do you know a lot of 19-year-old women? Danielle, does he know?
I've been asked so many loaded questions during this discussion. It's incredible. I think actually I had some good practice. So my previous book, Imperium, had 2 protagonists. One was a boy who was, I think he was 13, and one was a young, a girl who was 12 or 13. And that was my first time writing for a female protagonist. And I think that was very good practice. And I remember when I was writing Imperium, I felt like that was daunting. And then I started doing it. It was fine. And there's really, I don't think it needs to be as challenging as all that. Although I will say, I did have some very good friends, some fellow writers, who were kind enough to look at the draft as I was writing them. And I have one friend, a good friend of ours, Veronica, out in California, Veronica Rossi, a spectacular author, who she read some scenes and she did steer me a little bit here and there, like like Maggie was packing to head out, and she's like, no, that's not what you would bring. And I'm like, she brought some sensible sweaters. And Veronica was like, no. So things like that were helpful. But no, I don't find it, I like acting. No, I don't find it so challenging.
Awesome. So you talked a little bit about the theme that I thought was really funny, which is the idea of hell as corporate bureaucracy, and curse management as one of the divisions. How did you go about developing that? Where did that come from?
So I don't think it's actually all that difficult. So if you read there, so there were a bunch of Christian scholars in the Middle Ages who wrote all of these books about where they really tried to sort of define heaven and organize heaven like a country with different tiers of angels, and there are this many of this type of angel, this many of this type of angel. And of course, people followed on that and did the exact same thing with hell. And it was so-and-so is a duke of hell, and they have this many legions who work under them, and this is their symbol, and this is, you know, how you can identify them. And it was this real sort of detailed taxonomy of how everything worked. So that goes back hundreds of years. Before I became a teacher and a writer, I did work at a pretty corporate job in consulting, and so I did see how different organizations operated. And so all I really had to do was turn the dial up on some of the most ridiculous things about corporate life to ridiculous levels. So for example, Laszlo's office is in Midtown, far below the level of the street. And there are, of course, it's New York, there are sewer gators that live in the sewers. And they are enormous. They're the size of Cadillacs, and they're totally white and now albino after hundreds of years, down here, and they are blind. And so, of course, as this new boss takes over this division of hell, he starts using these gators, which are blind and can sense when nearby prey are sleeping. And so he uses them to increase the productivity in the office. So these things are rampaging around the cubicles, and if anybody dozes off, the gator senses it and comes running. And so just having fun with that and trying to lean in, curses being traded as commodities, which curses are most productive, and things like that. We're a lot of fun.
We all think this way.
We all do.
So we talked a little bit about you illustrating, right? And you've illustrated a lot of these characters, which we'll talk about a little bit later. How did you, when you're writing, do you dream up what the character looks like first, or do they sort of come to your mind visually as you're writing them?
Mix of both, I would say. It's a little bit of a push and a little bit of a pull. But I will, I should have brought it with me. So the Witchstone is not an illustrated book.
No.
But there are many drawings I have done for the Witchstone. Drawings of characters, drawings of scenes, drawing of settings, that kind of stuff, especially if I'm feeling creatively stuck writing. I feel like drawing is a great way creatively to use different muscles. And it's a way of pushing things forward, even though I'm not putting words on the page at that moment. And so I like to use the two in conjunction with one another. But I am very visual. So Clarence, who is one of my favorite characters in the book, my ideas for a demon with the head of a goblin shark go back, years and years and years.
Of course they do.
Of course they do.
So I want to make sure there's time to sign all your books, to do all the things we need to do. Is there anything else you want to tell us before I make some announcements and thank you to your people?
Seeing this group of people here is overwhelming, and the launching of a book is always a jumble of emotions, and you're very excited, but it's also, you're nervous. Is the book going to do well? How's it going to, how are people going to receive the book? But writing a book is a tremendously solitary experience. But launching a book really takes a village. And I appreciate so much the support from the people in this room and the people who might be watching elsewhere, the millions of you.
Millions by a live stream.
But my family, I have a wonderful family. Even when they rate my books,
Four out of five.
Pretty tough. I have just the best family, not only in terms of emotional support, but in terms of kicking ideas around. They're very bright, they're very creative. My wife Danielle and my boys Charlie and James have been incredible. And also having friends like Alyssa and Peternell and Cyndie, all my creative friends that I get to bounce things around with. It really is a luxury. And I'm a very, very fortunate person. And so I just really want to say thank you to all of you. I truly appreciate you being here and each of you committing to buying hundreds and hundreds of copies and telling people aggressively about the book on public transportation is something I'm excited for and I appreciate very much.
I was asking if you had anything else you wanted to tell us about the book, but that was lovely. That was really lovely. It has been a privilege to be in conversation with you. So thank
Always
you.
with you too. Thank you.
A few brief notes. Bless you. Henry forgot to mention his mom Terry in the acknowledgement, so as he is signing the book, feel free to give him shit about that.
Mystery solved.
So be sure to mention that as he signs your book. Buy 10 copies of the book. Do we have enough for everybody to buy 10 copies? 16 copies?
On
Okay, we could make it happen. Okay, buy 10 copies of the book. Buy them here. And then go to one of the big sites that shall not be named and write a review. You do not need to buy them there to leave a review there, but that is how books sell. So, how many copies of the book are you all going to purchase? 16. Leave it to the brother. Yes, 16. But please do post your review. Sorry, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was going to say like Schnitzengruben.
I think that was a Blazing Saddles reference.
Really? You just dropped that casually?
Well,
That was a very obscure reference.
Just casually in the bookstore? Come on. If you missed it tonight, any of the million people via live stream, there is another 1.3 million, which we can see from the back of the phone. There is another event that you're doing, an author talk at the Montclair Public Library, and that is happening on the 27th,
Correct.
6 p.m., South
Yes.
Fullerton.
Correct. Yes, we're doing an event. So I am privileged to be on the Montclair Public Library Foundation, where we try to raise funds to support and supplement programs at the library. And so I'm honored to do an event there. So if anybody who is watching who couldn't be here tonight, so Thursday the 27th at 6 p.m. at the library.
Excellent.
Oh, and one other thing though, I do want to mention. So I mentioned that this is not an illustrated book, but we are doing a special giveaway where if you post about the Witchstone on social media and you tag me, Henry H. Neff, we're going to do 10 different books that have a drawing that I did on the title page. And they're 10 different drawings. So,
Get pictures. Hold it up.
oh, there we go.
Pictures being taken.
I don't know if I'm holding that up well or not. But the more times you post, the more times you're entered. So I'm building a spreadsheet. And then, so if you post hundreds of times, you will have hundreds of entries and you'll have a pretty good chance of winning one of the books. And everyone is different. So no two drawings on them will be the same. So consider entering and spreading the word. Thank you.
And what they do is they post the book online, they tag you on
Post
social.
online, you could hashtag the Witchstone and then tag at Henry H. Neff.
Great, and you don't need to have a spreadsheet, there's an app for this, Henry. I can help you to figure
Good
that
to
out.
know.
Thank you all, thank you for being here.
Oh,
Thank
but
you
we
for
do
showing
want
up for Henry.
to, do we want to take any questions from people?
No.
No?
I'm
Or
just
we-
kidding, I'm just kidding.
Fans want.
Okay.
No questions.
Two-parter. Many classics have been now converted into graphic novels. Is that maybe a place where you can use your drawings? Two, how much of this book was written by AI?
Good question. I'm going to answer the first. I'll answer the second part. 83%. 83%. But there were a lot of split infinitives, and so I had to go there. I do want to do a graphic novel, so I would say that that is on my bucket list, and I'm trying to up my game there. So I feel confident that there are aspects of a graphic novel that I could do today. There are things, though, in the graphic novels that I've seen that I really admire that I don't think I could do today. And so, for example, if you look at some of the ones where the art is more elevated, one of the things that I really admire is that those people are able to capture so many nuances of everyday life effortlessly. So the people in the backyard, the background of the cafe, or the street scene, and just people in the background. And so I could do more sort of dynamic superhero posy kind of things that are more staged. But what I really want to do is capture those interstitial moments in a more nuanced and subtle and natural way. And so what I'm trying to do is to carve out some time to just draw hands, draw people sitting at a table, draw somebody ordering something from so all those little things so that it doesn't feel stiff and stilted. But one day I would like to do that.
You mean nudity? We get it.
Nudity, that's right.
Sorry, first here.
Congratulations to you, Henry,
Thank you.
on an important day for your family and your son
Thank you.
and the nation. I asked the question of authors about the title, and I guess when I read it, maybe I'll come up with the answer.
Yep.
How did you pick that title, please?
Good question. So the Witchstone, so the curse that is the centerpiece of this book, I hope this is not cutting up. It involves this huge, otherworldly kind of monolith in upstate New York that is like 40 feet tall, that looks like an explosion of obsidian coming out of the ground, in this area that in colonial times was called the Hexenwood, which meant the witchwood in Dutch, before the colony was taken over by England, I think in 1684 or something like that, or 1664. So that is where, so everything in this story revolves around the witch, what's called the Witchstone. And it is the curse that this family labors under. Laszlo, who is the curse keeper, he doesn't even really know much about this Witchstone. And so he is trying to get this family's hopes up that they can break the curse, because that makes the curse more productive, because it increases the amount of misery and despair that the curse generates. But Laszlo is wholly ignorant as to the real history of the curse and this stone at its center. And as the story progresses, they find out that the origins and the danger are far, far greater than they could ever have imagined.
Hi, I loved the description of the world building and this concept of the Bible that's sort of the blueprint of the book. Do you have an idea to publish that at some point as a follow-up and make that available?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's something I would publish right now. So, there might be a sequel to the Witchstone one day. I wanted to write it as a standalone that could grow if people like it and there's demand. So it'll depend a little bit on what happens with that. But in terms of I just republished the Tapestry series, and one of the things that we added onto that was a very detailed reader guide that is cross-referenced and covers all of the characters and the places and events and special terms, and it grows with the books throughout the series so that there are no spoilers. If you're reading book 2, you don't want to see stuff that happens in book 5. So that is something that I do try to build and grow, and readers do, if they get invested in the series, they do typically get interested in those things. So it's certainly, I'd be open to it down the road, but I'll have to probably see if there's going to be a sequel to this book first.
Longtime fan. I was wondering, Henry, you make jokes about writing a lot, and I'm just wondering, how do you decide how long the story is going to be?
Well, I take a look at what's at the market, in common and popular in the market, and I add 30%. I'm the Judd Apatow of writers. It's just a little too long. I don't, I tend to, I want to tell a story, and I want to get into the story, and I want things to feel grounded and natural and not rushed and kind of evolve in their own pace and time. I am trying to get better at getting stories to start quickly. So people's attention spans are dwindling all the time. They have these horrifying statistics on all these databases of books that are out there where publishers can see where people tend to abandon books. And it's shocking. And so whenever somebody who is an aspiring author contacts me and is asking me about putting together their pitch or their query, I always say, make sure your first 10 pages are great. And make sure that first 2 pages are great. And that doesn't necessarily mean like something has to explode, but you have to have intrigue right away. In terms of the length of the book, I always do have an end in mind. So I've never written a book where I haven't known what the ending would be. But I try to give myself flexibility to get to that ending point in the most intriguing, fun way that I can. And whatever ends up being the length is just what the length of the book ends up being. But we cut this down a little bit, but it was a fairly clean draft. We didn't take too much out, but it's like 135,000 words or something like that, which is still a lot of words, but this book reads fast. You can read this book easily in a day or two. It's a very, very fast read. Whatever I did, I'm sorry.
So, as you mentioned before, this the Witchstone was of interest to be turned into maybe a movie or a TV show. And if it was like a movie or TV show to be viewed by the millions of people, would you have it live action or would you rather have it animated?
Great question, mysterious kid. Who is turning 13 on Saturday. And we can all place bets right now on whether or not he wakes up on Saturday with a wispy mustache. We'll see if that happens. But that is a great question. I do think that they can do, the gap between what you can imagine visually and what can actually be executed in live action has shrunk considerably, even for television these days. I always grew up being a big fan of animation, and when I was a kid I wanted to be a Disney animator. And so part of me, and they're doing amazing things now in adult animation, which again sounds very racy, but I get torn a little bit. But I do think that just my own, if I had sort of an unlimited budget and I could do it the way that I wanted to do it, it would probably be animated, but wouldn't pull any punches on the story.
Is there one more question? Or nope?
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you,
Thank
Cyndie.
you, everybody.
This is one of our liveliest book talks and the most adult.
So glad we did this in the children's space.
But we're all like those who haven't read it yet. We can't wait to start. So thank you.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
I want to thank Watching Booksellers. They've been incredible, truly incredible partners to me for years. And I appreciate you very much.
You keep us entertained, so it says a lot. Just a little house note. Henry would be thrilled to sign books. We're just going to pick up these chairs first, and the line should come down here. We do have Cyndie's books here to book.
Which are nothing
Micro
like
jewelry.
this.
Right, no, nothing, not even adult enough, but. But I also want to say, again, plug you for our podcast, the Watching Booksellers podcast, because your session was one of the best, so we really enjoyed it. And thank you again, everyone, for coming out in a hot night.